Hi, everyone. Welcome. We have our special guest, director Roz Owen, who has the film Trouble in the Garden screening across Canada. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you once again for interviewing me for this film because it makes such a difference for these indie films to get them out and get the word out about them. And we've just had a screening in Toronto at the Carlton, and we're now in Saskatoon. So the film is beginning its national tour, and so we've got a screening tonight in Regina, and then on Friday we start our Saskatoon screening. So that's and Raven Sinclair, who's my key collaborator on the film, she's put together a fantastic panel of people to talk about the scoop. My film is about the 60s scoop.
Amazing. Fantastic. Yeah, the last time we spoke, we did an Instagram live, which was very cool. And you were telling me how the idea for this film came about. So maybe you can.
Well, it was really inspired by a family member of mine who when I heard about her story, she was scooped and put into foster care, as all her siblings were. And I thought, if I don't know this story, then other Canadians don't know this story either. So that's how it began. It's not her story. It's a made up story. It's a drama. I wanted to make a drama because I feel that dramas have the possibility of being able to flip people's thinking, and so that was why I decided it because it's emotional. So
Right.
emotional.
Right.
So that's why I decided to make it as a drama. But that's where the initial idea came from.
Okay, and were you shocked when you found out about the 60s scoop?
Yeah, I was very shocked because we see ourselves in Canada as being so kind, and we bring people in from all over the world, and yet we've got this history in terms of the way we've been in terms of Indigenous people in this country, which is we try to pretend it didn't happen. So we had 7 generations of the residential schools, and then from the late 50s into the 80s, there was a government program to take children out of their Indigenous homes and put them into white families to erase their past. So yeah, it's shocking actually. And I think one of the reasons this panel discussion on Friday I'm so excited about it is because Raven has put together some scoop survivors to talk about it because It's a film that I find people really want to stay in the cinema and talk about it because it's that sort of story. It doesn't sort of fix everything or make it. It's not a fairy tale kind of story at all. So it's people really want to speak about it and find out about it.
So maybe tell us a little bit about the panel that's been organized. Do you know who's going to be on it? And
well, there's myself and Raven, and then there's Betty Ann Adam, who was she's a Star Phoenix reporter actually, and she was scooped herself. And there's a film that was made by Tasha Hubbard, and it's about her family coming together for the very first time and meeting each other and connecting. And it's a very powerful documentary. Oh, wow. It's a very, very moving film called Birth of a Family. So that's Betty Ann. And I think there's the 3 of us, and then there's somebody who's the MC for the evening that is part of the theater program, Indigenous theater in Saskatoon.
Oh,
sorry,
amazing.
That's very old.
Amazing. And maybe you can tell us how you became involved with Raven Sinclair. Like, how did you guys start collaborating? How did that happen? That genesis.
Well, I was looking for a collaborator because I knew I could tell the white side of the story, the settler side of the story. Right. But I knew that I needed a collaborator, somebody that I could work very closely with in terms of a story that I knew from a family member, but it wasn't my story. Right. So I'd actually heard Raven on CBC Radio.
Oh.
And she was speaking about the scoop, and I just was blown away by the way she could speak so eloquently and so I just thought she was a wordsmith. And so I put her into Google and found her phone number and phoned her up, and she picked up the phone, which is so unusual. And there she was, and we started speaking, and I told her about my film. And I also said, there's a film that inspired me that you probably won't know. It's called Celebration by Thomas Vinterberg.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
She said, because that was a dogma film.
Yeah.
Danish dogma film. And she said, oh my God, she said, I watch that every 6 months. Like, that's one of my favorite films. So I knew then that we had this partnership, and this she was my collaborator, and she has been through we went through the script, we went through just every detail, all the edits. We talked through it all the way through. So she's been such a support and so lovely to work with. So I think we'll work again together.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Had she ever done anything like this before? Had she ever?
She had a documentary film that she made about children taken from her reserve. Okay. She had done. So but she hadn't done a drama before. But she was one of those sort of people. I think I could tell because of the way she spoke that she had a way with words. So, some of the great lines in the script are actually Raven's, for sure.
Amazing. And the casting was very cool. Cara Gee, Jon Cor. How did you?
Well, Cara, I'd seen in plays around Toronto. She did a lot of theater, and so I had her in mind when I wrote the script. And so when I was very nervous about approaching her, because I thought, no, I've just written this, and that's who I'm imagining in the role. And so it took me a while to give her the script. And when I gave her the script, she said, this is a very important story. That's the first thing she said. So she was on board right away. And in terms of Jon Cor, we ended up doing a crazy Skype interview that everything that could go wrong with Skype went wrong. And there was something about him, and I just thought, he's charming, and he can play that slippery character. I just thought he's Colin. He's just got the right feel for him. And so that was his decision. And Kelly Vanderberg who plays Alice, his wife, is an extraordinary actor. Yeah. And in many ways, we see the film through her eyes. Mm-hmm. We get to understand it as she begins to understand the story, because she's not from the family; she's married into the family.
Yeah, she's got an interesting point of view for sure. And Jon Cor's character, he's got so much duality. Like, he's got so many layers to him that are really complex and work fantastically for the.
I think he's a really interesting actor. Actually, mm-hmm. I really liked working with him a lot. He came to Whistler to see the film when we screened it at Whistler at a festival. And it was just lovely to catch up with him again. But he was tremendous. And I was very lucky because the actors were so excited about the script and the story that they really threw themselves into it in a way that was people were very emotional. It's an emotional story. So even the crew were, as they found out, because most people didn't know about the 60s scoop. Right. So as they found out about it, through the making of the film, they were very, very touched and very emotional. And I think Kelly said something interesting too. She said, because we were mostly shooting in one location, I mean, we had dashed out and did other things, but it was set within a house, that people got to know each other in a different way than you usually do on a film set, which I hadn't thought about before, but I think that really helped, because it is about a family.
And very intimate.
So, it's very intimate. Yeah.
And how did you work with all those emotions? Like, what was that like, trying to manage that, or how?
Well, I guess it was emotional, but important. So it wasn't. It was. I'd look at a scene, for example, because Fiona Reid, who's also such a tremendous actor, and she she and Raven have a scene in the garage, as you know, and there was something. I just looked and saw that the crew had tears in their eyes, and I thought, okay, you know what, we've got it. And I, you know, because that's the only way I know when a scene's working, if I actually feel like I'm watching it and I'm in it, and it moves me. So I could see that the crew were very moved by that. So I don't know. I think mostly people were proud because it was a story that needed to be told. I think that was the feeling I got anyway.
That's great, because then it's so hard to get, like in theater you get direct feedback, but you know, when you're filming, sometimes it's hard to get that feedback. That it's good that you have.
No, that's a very good point, actually, and I was very worried because we shot it very, very quickly, and we didn't have any rehearsal time. And I was very worried about that because I'd said, okay, we have to, when we're going into this, we've got to have rehearsal time. And it turned out that we ended up shooting it in 12 days with no rehearsal time. Wow. So it was fast. Yeah. It was very fast.
Indie film.
Indie Canadian film.
Right.
Nobody, it's just how we shoot films in this country, I think. It's fast and furious.
And the soundtrack, too, had some Indigenous music that came in, and it was really powerful, too. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Or?
Please, thank you for mentioning that. That was an amazing experience because Barbara Kroll, who's the composer, we worked so carefully. We talked it through, and she worked on it in a way that was very unusual, I thought. At a certain point, she actually sang the songs in her own language. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, she's not going to understand it. She was a scoop survivor, and Raven and Barbara said, "Oh, but she will." And her ancestors are there waiting for her, and when she's ready, she'll hear it.
Right.
And I thought that still sends tingles up my spine. Like, I just think she had, because she holds all that knowledge.
Right.
You know, being Indigenous herself, that she can, she knows that experience from her friends, from her family, from, you know, her own family's situation with the residential schools. So to her it was a joy to work with her. She's very, very talented. And so all the voices, they're all words, and people who are Indigenous, somebody was in the audience in Toronto, and she understood the language.
Amazing. Wow.
Was songs.
Wow.
So there's all sorts of layers to it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And finally, like, when people go to see the film, what are your hopes that the message that they receive, or what you'd like them to sort of take away?
I think what I hope for most is that it would flip a few people's thinking. That sounds very manipulative of me, but I think it's a way of telling a story in an emotional way, mm-hmm. which I've heard people say terrible things, and I think that people don't notice that they're doing it. And I thought in terms of being able to juxtapose those two worlds, that if I could do that in a way that was honest, that perhaps people would see it. There's a scene when the dad, Frank Moore, who's also another amazing actor, Canadian actor, and he's talking all about his ancestors in Scotland, and he's never lived in Scotland before, but he goes on and on about it, and she's completely left out of it, so I just wanted to find a way of juxtaposing her world and their world in a way that would shake people up a bit. Mm-hmm. And that was the structure that I used. That was the intention. So I hope people have a bit more compassion for people. I hope that there's a better understanding. I think if there's ever going to be any kind of reconciliation in this country, we need to step up. The white settlers need to step up and understand the history of what our ancestors have done in this country. And if we can do that, then there's hope. And it's not like it's a mess at the end, but it's a little bit of a hopeful mess. So it's not that's what I hope. I mean, that's maybe it's a lot to hope for, but I think that's one of the reasons to me it's so important that we have screenings, that we have panel discussions, because I think it's an opportunity for people to ask questions, and people do really want to ask questions. So
and to have the conversation.
Yeah, just to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Well, Analia, thank you so much again. You guys are amazing, because it is so difficult with these little indie films to get them out into the world, and I so appreciate it, and so appreciate your thoughtful questions and your interest in the film. So
everyone, support indie film. Go and see. Go to your local theater, see a Canadian film, and Trouble in the Garden. Look for it. In Saskatoon this weekend, March 8th.
Yep. March 8th, Friday, and then on Saturday it's at 3 in the afternoon. And then it plays again on the Sunday. Oh, you know what? I think check the listings at the theater, because I'm going to get it wrong. But I know there's a matinee screening on Saturday,
and then
the big screening is the 7 o'clock.
And stay tuned for more screenings coming your way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.